Hey everyone, welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to do another lab from Cyber, which is CYBR, a platform that teaches you how to get good at AWS pen testing and blue team and even DevOps. If you want to be a cloud engineer or a cloud pen tester, this is an incredible platform with high quality courses and labs. The cool thing about this platform is a sub is super affordable. It's right around $10 a month for a sub to get access to all of the material, but they have quite a few labs that are completely free. So in this video, I want to showcase a completely free lab, and we're going to go through how to do AWS IAM enumeration. Now, an AWS IAM is kind of like the user account, the identity access manager. And so during a pen test, that's a big part of what you're doing is enumerating different users and different roles in the AWS environment. And what we are going to do is we're going to go through the full lab. I'll show you how to do it manually via the AWS CLI, but then we're going to automate like everything using Pacu. Now, if you've never heard of Paku, it is sort of like Metasploit for the cloud. It is a AWS security tool developed by the greatest pen testing firm on planet Earth called Rhino Security Labs. I might be a little bit biased because I work there, but we really are a pretty cool firm. So I want to show you how to also do this lab with Paku. So we'll get hands-on with installing and using Paku, and we'll get hands-on with the AWS CLI. I just released a video about how to use the AWS CLI. So if you missed that video and you're brand new to AWS, go ahead and watch that video. It'll catch you up to speed and you'll be able to do this lab right alongside of me. And one final thing, I kind of feel silly that I have to say this, but I want to be clear, this video is not sponsored at all by Cyber or any other entity. For those of you who know me, you know that I don't do sponsored videos. So if I am talking about a platform or a lab, it's not because they're paying me, it's because I genuinely learned something from it, or I enjoyed it, or I just want to share with you what I am working on. I don't do sponsored videos. Not only did Cyber not sponsor me, I bought a membership. So I pay Cyber. So they don't pay me, I pay them, and I just appreciate their platform and wanted to showcase some of these free labs and encourage you to follow along with me. So without any further ado, let me go ahead and share my screen. On Cyber, when you log in, you'll be in your dashboard. If you want to follow along, the way you can do this is if you go up to Learn right here and click Hands On. We can click View Our List of Labs. And the lab that we are going to do is right here, Introduction to AWS IAM Enumeration. And once you get here, you will just click Start Lab and it will spin everything up for you. The cool thing about these labs is you do not need your own AWS account. They spin it up in their own sandbox. So you don't have to worry about security issues. You don't have to worry about cost issues. It's all in their environment. I have already done this, so I'll flip back over to this. Once you spin up the lab, but I'll give you an access key, a secret access key, and our username. So let's go ahead and do what we did in the first video. We will configure our profile and then we will work through this lab. It looks like I'm on a timer as well. We have 27 minutes. So this video is going to be 27 minutes or shorter. Let me go ahead and grab the access key ID. I will jump over to here. This is from our previous lab. I'm going to go to my Cyber folder and we will go ahead. I'll make this big for now. We'll do AWS configure profile. I'm just going to call this one Cyber, and I will drop my access key ID in there. I will grab my secret key, jump back over to this. We will do US East 1 for our region, enter on that. And remember from the first video, the who am I command in AWS. AWS STS get caller identity, profile, and Cyber, and let's make sure everything worked well, and it did. So we are successfully authenticated to the account as the Joel user. Let's jump back to the lab. So this provides us with an environment to practice enumerating AWS IAM to get familiar with the process and warm up before diving into CTFs. I'm going to scroll down a little bit. So getting started, we've already launched the lab. We've already set up our access keys. We already went through the lab that teaches us how to set up access keys. Let's begin with IAM users enumeration. We already did this, the who am I command in AWS, so we can scroll through there. We already talked about that. We talked about what we get back. We're interested in our account ID and the ARN, which we have all that stuff here. And you know what, I'll even go ahead and grab this and we'll drop it in our notes here because that might come up later. If we have permissions, we could also issue this command, get user, and it looks like we do. Let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to pull my terminal side to side here, make my terminal a little bit smaller if it lets me. Hopefully you guys can still see it okay. But we'll do AWS IAM get user, and I do have to use my profile of cyber since I set it up with the profile. And you can see when we do that, it gives us our username, our user ID, and our ARN. So similar to what the get caller identity gives us. So most attackers start off by doing this, of course, which is exactly what I do, both in labs and in AWS pen test, because you want to know what information you have about our user, and AWS isn't going to prevent that call. You can actually set up alerts though. So when you see a user making these calls a bunch of times, you can set up alerts on the security side of it. But let's keep on going. Next, we could try using a call like this to get a snapshot of the configuration of IAM permissions, users, groups, roles, and policies, and the relationships in your account. So you can imagine when you jump onto let's say a Windows machine in a CTF, you often do net users, right? Net users domain. You're trying to figure out the users in the domain, net groups. That's sort of what this is, but in AWS. So it's not going to work. We don't have permission. But if we did, we do AWS IAM get account authorization details, pass it our profile of cyber, and it would work if we had permission. But you can see we're not authorized to perform it on this resource because that's just the wild card on the resource, because no identity-based policy allows us to do that. So let's try to enumerate more information about our current user and other users in the account. So once again, in Windows, it's a net user, right, to get that information. Well, in AWS, it's a list users, this is one of the few AWS commands that isn't super confusing to me, right? I can understand this. AWS, oh, let me jump up here. AWS IAM list users, profile cyber. And we have some users here. We have Chris, we have Joel, we have Mary, we have Mike, and that is everyone that we have. There are 4 IAM users in the account, and we can list our access keys associated with our user. You can also list access keys associated with other users. You, of course, can't get the secret, but you can see if access keys have been generated for that user. So we will go ahead and do that. AWS IAM list access keys, profile cyber, and you can see our username Joel. We have the access key ID, whether or not it's active and when that key was created. One of the things you actually check in an AWS pen test is you want to make sure keys are being actively rotated, right? If there's a key for a user with high privileges that hasn't been rotated in, a year, 2 years, 3 years, it's actually something you want to let the client know about. All right, now that we have basic information, it's time to dive into the weeds. Let's start trying to enumerate permissions. We can start by listing out user policies, and to save on time, I'll just enumerate the users Joel and Mary. So let's go ahead and do that. AWS IAM list user policies. We're going to pass it our username, and our username is this right here, introduction to AWS. Yours will be different. Profile cyber. Okay, so what is Joel allowed to do? Joel is allowed to enumerate roles, and we can do the same thing to Mary, which I need to go back and grab Mary's credentials, or not her credentials, her account, which is, Mary, where are you? Mary, did you know that you're in my AWS account? All right, let's go ahead and do the same thing to Mary. We'll just replace Joel's username with Mary's username. Okay. What is going on in this witchcraft? Oh my goodness. I don't know what's going on there. AWS IAM list user policies. I can type faster than trying to follow whatever my terminal was doing to me there. And there we go. She doesn't have access to anything. So we can see Joel, the Joel user has a policy named allow enumerate roles, but the user Mary has no policy names. Does that mean Mary has no permissions? No. Confusing, I know, but it's AWS, so it's par for the course. This command only lists our in-align policies, not our manage policies. Also, keep in mind that users are often part of groups, and groups often have policies attached to them. We'll get back to that. Before we list out manage policy, let's retrieve Joel's policy. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll do AWS IAM get user policy. Username, we want to grab our Joel username, which we saved up here, like so. And then our policy name, allow enumerate roles, profile cyber. There we go. So our policy name is allow enumerate roles. And what does it allow us to do? Well, we can get roles, we can get role policies, we can list roles, we can list role policies on any resource in the AWS account. And of course, the effect is allow. Dur said, are there any defense evasion labs? I think there are. Well, I'll show you the full labs as soon as we complete this, and we'll see what other labs there are. But I believe there are. Again, this is not the only permissions Joel has. To see what I mean, let's list attached managed policies. So this is the part that's confusing about AWS and your enumerating. There's these different types of policies, but what I show you with Paku will automate that for us. But for now, let's do it manually. AWS IAM list attached user policies. If I could, I spelled that right? User name Joel. And I don't know how to spell, apparently. What did I spell wrong? List attached user. Oh, not polices. Polices isn't what we're listing. And maybe I should specify the profile. Good job, Tyler. We don't get anything back, which means Joel doesn't have any attached managed policies. It's still worth checking. All right, so groups. So in Windows, right, you do the net groups command. Well, in AWS, we're going to do list groups. So let's give that a shot. I'm going to clear this. AWS IAM list groups, profile, cyber. There we go. So we have our introduction to IAM developers, and we have our infrastructure group. So we have a developers group and an infrastructure group. I think these might come in handy later. So I am going to grab these for now and just drop them into our notes. There are two groups, developers and infrastructure. How can you tell which one we're a part of? Well, there's a simple command we can issue. So like net group for your user in Windows, we do something similar in AWS. We'll do AWS IAM list groups for user name, and then we need to grab our username. I should just save this to a freaking variable so I don't need to keep doing this, but profile cyber. So Joel is in the developers group. So now the group might have permissions that Joel himself doesn't have. So we want to figure out, well, what permissions does our developer group have? So AWS IAM get group, we're going to give it our group name. And our group name is this right here. Profile cyber. Okay, so we have our users. Well, we're just getting the group. We're just seeing other users in the group. I see. So in the developers group, we have Joel and we have Mike. We can list out our permissions. That's what I thought we were doing. So now we're going to list out our permissions for the group itself. So AWS IAM list group policies, group name. Do I still have that saved? Okay, I do. And profile cyber. So we have this policy, this devs policy. So now we're going to dig into that policy, like what information is in this policy. And the way we're going to do that is AWS IAM get group policy, group name. You can also see why people have automated this process, because this is a lot of commands to remember. And this is why I'm always confused when trying to do stuff with AWS. Policy name. And we'll grab our policy name from right there. Like so. And you need to specify a profile cyber, which I didn't do. Okay, so now we have some information about this. So we can list access keys, like Joel and Mike can both list access keys. And what are the other actions we can do? Well, we can do a bunch of things. We can list group policies, attached policies, users attached, users groups, like all the things we've already done. We can do that because we are in that dev group. So although Joel himself doesn't have those permissions assigned to his specific IAM, it's assigned to the dev group, which he is a part of, which is the reason we're able to run all of those commands. All right, now we're talking. This tells us that members of this group have all these permissions, kind of like what I said. And finally, let's see if there are any attached group policies. So this would be another policy in the group, different than the policies we already looked at. I know, confusing, but I'll show you the cool Paku stuff in a second. We will do AWS IAM list attached group policies, our group name. Do I still have the name there? Beautiful. Profile cyber. And did I do something wrong? Oh, I have the I did the policy, not the group. List attached group policies, group name, and then we want to grab our developer name, which I think I saved if I was smart. Yep, here it is right there. Profile cyber. And we don't have any attached policies. But remember, there's another group, so let's go ahead and check out the other group, the infrastructure group. So AWS IAM get group name, and we will go ahead and grab the infrastructure group right here. All right, and so similar information as before, we can see that in the infrastructure group, we have Chris and we have Mary. We can do the same thing with getting the group policy. So AWS IAM list group policies, group name, that, profile cyber. All right, and now, of course, we have to check the policy information. So we're doing a lot of the same thing for these different groups, but remember, the way you learn things on the command line interface, whether it's Bash or AWS, is you just have to do it over and over again so you build up that muscle memory. Some of you know that I enjoy boxing, and when it comes to boxing, it's the same thing. The great philosopher Mike Tyson once said, everybody has a plan until they're punched in the face. When you're punched in the face, that's when you rely on muscle memory, and if you have not repeated the same thing over and over and over and over again, you're going to get beat up. Well, it's the same with technology, same with cybersecurity. It's all about muscle memory. So it feels like we're doing the same thing over and over again, but it is good for you. If you're following along, typing this hands-on keyboard, you're getting a feel for some of these commands now. AWS IAM get, actually let me clear so my face isn't blocking this. AWS IAM get group. Oh, I didn't save the policy though. Come on, Tyler, what are you doing with your life, homie? Here is our policy. Let me go ahead and grab that policy and we'll just drop it in our notepad up here. Like that. And now we will try this. AWS IAM get group policy. Group name, of course, is right here. And policy name is what we just copied into our notepad right there. And we have to do profile cyber as well to make sure we're using the right profile. And we can see that Mary and Chris can do much of the same stuff that we can do. I think those are almost all the same things, right? But oh, they have attached group policies. So remember, our initial group did not have attached group policies. This group does. So AWS why does it do that? AWS IAM list attached group policies, group name, and our group name is infrastructure. Profile cyber. And so now we could dig deeper into these policies, although these are actually AWS created policies. So you can see this one probably gives access to CloudFormation, and this one probably gives access to the Amazon S3 buckets. Oh, just like I said, right? They're AWS managed policies, but that's not all we can do. Instead, let's move on to enumerating IAM roles. Let me scroll up. Am I out of time yet on my lab? How am I doing on my lab? 11 minutes. All right, we got to do this in 11 minutes. I might have to launch the lab again for the Paku side. Yo, Jacob just did the super chat of $5. Yo, Jacob, thank you so much, my friend, for the super chat. Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, role enumeration. Let's go ahead and enumerate our roles, which is where we'll often find a lot of permissions. So AWS IAM list roles, and then of course from our profile cyber. We have a bunch of roles here, but from what I can see, we have some AWS specific roles, like admin access is an AWS role. Usually in a pen test, what you're looking for is customer manage roles, because those are roles that customers have put specific permissions in, and that's where you might be able to abuse some things for privilege escalation if the customer manage role is misconfigured. All right. Oh yeah. So it's just saying that there's a bunch of roles. Okay, I'm going to get out of that. Blah, blah. Let's narrow it down. If you already know the name of the role, you can filter like this. So we're going to do the same command I don't know why terminal does that, but we want to query, kind of like what we did before, roles, like so. And the role name we're looking for is support role, like so. And our profile cyber. And you can see we can read the support role, which says Mary is able to assume the role, the support role. So Mary must be part of the support team for internal support. Assumed by the user Mary and not our user Joel. Knowing that if we were an attacker or a pen tester trying to access this role, we might want to try and find a way to escalate privileges to Mary, for example. But that's just the assume role policy document, which tells us who can assume it. That's not the role's permissions. So if we were able to compromise Mary, we have to ask the question, well, what could Mary do by assuming this role? What access does she have in the AWS environment? And that's what we're doing right here. So we will do AWS IAM list role policies, our role name, and it's a support role from our profile cyber. And if I could learn how to type, that'd be a good starting point. Oh, it list role policies. Oh, my N in name is capital. Come on, Tyler. There we go. So it allows S3 full access for the role. And now we want to get the policy, right? So we can kind of guess this probably allows S3 full access, but just in case you want to check that, and we can do that by AWS IAM get role policy, give it our role name of support role, and we have to pass it the policy name that we found, which is the allow S3 full access for role. What are the chances I typed something wrong there? Pretty high. Oh, I didn't. Look at that. So what does this mean we can do? Well, it has a wildcard on S3. So every S3 bucket we're allowed with the wildcard resource. So this is literally full access to every S3 bucket in the AWS account. So in a pen test, this would be a pretty highly privileged role that we would want to take over, because with full access to S3 buckets, there's a lot of things that we could do if we were able to target the Mary user. So we can see this role as full Amazon S3 access, which should be a target of very high interest to a threat actor, and something as permissive as S3 should be a red flag to anyone reviewing this environment security. So we have successfully enumerated a lot of information. Feel free to keep playing around, but remember there is no flag or end goal here. This is just meant to introduce you to IAM enumeration. Let's see how I'm doing on time on my lab. Is my lab going to expire anytime soon? We have 7 minutes. I think that's enough time to show off Paku. So let me open a new tab here, and we'll just go to Paku on GitHub, and I'll give you a very quick introduction to Paku. I do want to make a course for Paku, teaching people how to use it. But Paku is an open source AWS exploitation framework designed for offensive security against cloud, specifically AWS. It's created and maintained by the greatest pen testing firm on the planet, and current modules enable a range of attacks. So you can install this with pip, super easy. I always recommend pipx. All right, pipx. Pipx just allows you to install stuff in its own virtual Python environment. So when you have different Python dependencies, sometimes they fight and they don't get along. So you can do sudo apt install pipx if you don't already have it. And then you can do pipx install Paku in order to install Paku. I'm pretty sure I have it installed. Yep, I do already have it installed. But then it will spin up Paku in its own virtual Python environment, just so you're not breaking other Python tools as you're installing different things. But once it is installed, we can go ahead and just type Paku. It will open up Paku here, and it says found existing sessions. I'm going to do a new session, so I'm going to type 0 on my keyboard. And it says, what do I want to name this session? Well, we'll just call this session Cyber for now. All right, I am going to go ahead and open this up. Maybe let me even exit out so it's full screen properly, and we'll do Cyber. So now we have a few different things that we can do, but we have to import our keys. So remember, we set up a profile in the beginning called Cyber. So we want to go ahead and do import keys, and we'll do Cyber. That will then import our keys as Cyber, and now we can search for different modules. So if we do search IAM, We have a few different modules that we can do. But one thing that we might want to do is, hey, we're doing IAM enumeration, so maybe we want to know what permissions do we have in the account, and we see a module here called IAM enum permissions, and we can do help IAM enum permissions to get information about that module. And it says this module will attempt to use IAM APIs to enumerate a confirmed list of IAM permissions for users and roles in the account. By default, the owner of the active set of keys is targeted. This is done by checking attached and inline policies for the user and the group. So everything that we kind of did, this will automate the process for us. And we can even specify different users, different roles. Because my lab time is running out, we're just going to do our user that we are logged into, that we have initial access to. Now to run this, we'll do run IAM enum permissions. All right, so you can see very quickly we have 20 confirmed permissions for our user. And now if we run who am I from within Paku, it is actually going to tell us everything that we already kind of learned doing the manual enumeration. So you can see we have our username, Joel, here. We have our ARN. We have our group. So it tells us we are in the developer group right here. It gives us the ARN for the group, gives us the policy name for the group, and then it's going to break down the different policies that we also have access to. So remember, we have the allow enumerate roles policy. We can list access keys for Joel and Mike, and then we have all of these policies attached to our dev group of all those things that we saw initially, where we can list roles, list users, and all of those good things. So that is one way that you can use Paku to automate this role in, well, I think that was 5 minutes. Like the lab itself took much longer. With Paku, we did the same thing in 5 minutes to get situational awareness in the AWS account and automated the process with Paku. And that is the end of this lab. So I want to say a huge thank you if you stuck through this lab with me. If you haven't checked out Cyber, check it out, experiment with this stuff, learn AWS. It really is an incredible skill to have, whether you're blue team or red team or a sysadmin. Companies are moving into the cloud. Now, I don't think they're all cloud, but often companies are taking a hybrid approach, and knowing AWS being the biggest cloud provider will be a big up for you in your resume and interviews and all the things that you are working on. So hey, hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully you learned something through the process, and I will see you guys in the next one.